Final Fantasy VII Rebirth producer Yoshinori Kitase says he's a bit embarrassed by the original game's portrayal of social problems, social issues, and cultural depictions. This story comes to us from Ryan Pearson over at Bounding Into Comics. Yoshinori Kitase, producer of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is embarrassed with how the original game he directed handled social issues and cultural depictions. Some of those who worked on the Final Fantasy VII game recently spoke to Game Informer's Brian Shea. Kitase was that game's director and writer alongside Kazushige Nojima. Based on the story by series creator Horinobu Sakaguchi and Tetsuya Nomura. The team discussed how that game started Final Fantasy titles being created in the modern way. While individuals could throw in elements on a whim, with Final Fantasy VI and prior, it wouldn't be until Final Fantasy VII that we saw the team begin to use more rigid plans and compartmentalizing. Nomura explained how Final Fantasy VII was a mix between the two extremes, though people could sneak lines into the script without being noticed. Kitase adds Nojima was the final reviewer of the game's story content, even though it was, quote, sort of an anything goes type of world back then. Kitase also discussed how the game handled real world issues back in 1997, Shea giving examples of corporate greed, environmentalism, and mental health. Quote, Final Fantasy VII, we were able to depict these types of issues like the cycle of life through the concept of the life stream. If we are to depict it exactly as we experience it in the real world, it would not be very interesting. With Nojima-san's ideas, we were able to have this centered on the life stream and the planet within the worldview of Final Fantasy VII. In this way, I believe the game and its themes remain relevant and withstand the test of time. Despite having just declared the game was standing the test of time, Kitase followed up with how he was disappointed with Final Fantasy VII. Quote, considering the way to depict social problems, social issues, and cultural depictions, in some ways, I am embarrassed by the original title. In its expression, in some ways, it was very young and naive in itself. That is a learning for us. But at the same time, I do believe that perhaps this is one of the reasons why it was so widely accepted. It's not perfect. It's kind of uneven, jagged in its naive and nature of its depiction. Of course, after more than 25 years, there is a lot of personal learning and changes and growth. I assume he's talking about himself in this way. But he goes on and he says, looking back on it, in some parts, I am a bit embarrassed. You know, Ryan provides a clip from the original game. Tifa says, quit slapping me, you old. It's bleeped out, yeah. I'm not sure that that's what Kitase would feel ashamed about, but the offending elements within Final Fantasy VII weren't elaborated on by Kitase, but can be speculated due to modern mainstream media typically being held under extreme scrutiny to avoid offense and, treading on political correctness. We're all very, very concerned about that, Very concerned. Very. Square Enix is also familiar and accepting of this, as Final Fantasy VII Remake had Tifa Lockhart's chest tightened by the ethics department. Now, Ryan goes on to list some more things here that could be Kitase's problem with the original depiction, but I'm not sure. The Japanese tend to think of these things a little bit differently than we do. Perhaps he had a more holistic view of what was supposed to happen, and through corporate meddling, it became more heavy metal than bluegrass. You know what I mean? I'm not sure, really, and we probably will never know. A lot of these guys are company men, and they don't want to risk getting fired by shooting their mouth off about their boss too much. This is probably the most we're going to get out of a guy like Kitase until he retires, but maybe we'll hear about that before then, or he'll write a book about the whole thing. Maybe we'll get a video game about it.